I'm going to come back and deal with that later. That's a sermon all by itself. Bishop and I were talking about that this morning. But this morning I want to deal with how many of us have had what we call a bad dream or even what we call a nightmare. And we wake up in fear that what we are dreaming is really happening. We will shake ourselves and look around and realize that I must be dreaming. And our fear then turns to joy and greatly relieved that is all is well. But you and I know that this is not always the case. Sometimes our bad dreams and our nightmares come true. In my study of this passage, I read a story about a submarine was rammed in by another ship and quickly sunk. Despite the many efforts by many ships to rescue the crew, it was feared that their oxygen would run out long before anyone could get to them. Hours into the desperate tragedy, the solar men, listening for any indication of life on a crippled sub, heard a tapping. Suddenly realizing it was the dots and dashes of the Morse code. The question comes slowly. Is there any hope? I want to talk to you this morning about, is there any hope? That's the question we all ask in this turbulent world, full of difficulties, depression, discouragement. We want to know, is there any hope? We may feel overwhelmed by financial or material or economical situations that we are in, or the difficulties of holiness in an unholy time. Being pure in the midst of so much impurity. Impurity seems to be an acceptance now. Perhaps we are concerned for our children, our grandchildren, our loved ones, or even our parents, or some of our loved ones who is not serving the Lord. Let's go even closer to home. You go to the doctor. The doctor says you have 12 months, 10 months, 5 months, 1 month to live. Your spouse says, I'm leaving. How many of us have experienced that just out of the clear blue? Maybe you knew a little thing, something was going on, but all of a sudden, I want a divorce. Your employer says, you think everything is okay, you think you're doing your job, you're doing fine, everything, we no longer need you. The company is downsizing. It has nothing to do with your abilities. It has nothing to do with your work. We just are downsizing. Your loved one says, sorry to tell you, I'm on drugs. Your accountant or even your bank book says, you're bankrupt. There is plenty to worry about today. So we ask, is there any hope? What we are to do when our bad dreams and our nightmares become a reality. Let me introduce you to someone whose nightmare became a reality. Someone who may be able to answer the question, is there any hope? King David was a made king by God, and he ruled over the nation of Israel. Under David's kingship, Israel flourished. There was peace and prosperity, both spiritual and physical. We all heard the story of David, But if we were to read 2 Samuel 15, we will find that David's life turns into what we could say a nightmare or a bad dream that became a reality. we remember, after his sin with Bathsheba, we know the story. His life was beset by personal crisis. We find that David's throne that God gave him, remember that, God gave it to him. His throne has been torn from his hand by his own son, Absalom. Not only wanted the throne, he didn't only want the throne, but he wanted his father's life. He wanted his father dead. We sometimes joke and say, the whole world seems to be against me. For a joke, but for David, in this scene right here, it was not a joke. Absalom had built a large following. We know how people tend to jump on the bandwagon. He was handsome, popular, and now had the majority support of the people. Like I heard my bishop say once upon a time, he says, even your enemies can be enemies with each other, but they'll even come together to go against you. If they see a cause that will get them against you, well, they will even come together. They may be enemies, but they will even join in together and come against you. As David was fleeing Jerusalem with some loyal men, he was ridiculed, as he had just a few loyal people. People were saying, your time is up, David. Look at you. God has forsaken you. Look at you. You don't have anything. Look at you. You're running. You have to leave your throne. You finna leave your city. Not only was David his physical life in danger, but there were those who were trying to destroy his faith. Listen to what they said to him. God has forsaken you. God has forsaken you. They planted seeds of doubt, undermined his confidence in the Lord. David, just like us, at some point in our lives, took a look around. Everywhere he turned, he saw an enemy. Have you ever been there? Seemed like everywhere you turn, there's something going on. He was visually surrounded. Do you remember at least one time in your life, when everywhere you turn, there it was, something, somebody, something that represented something. I mean, it was just madhouse. Evil always around. It seemed as though life had launched a pilot against you and was trying to take you out. Have you ever felt like life itself was trying to take you out? I don't know about you, but I have. Sometimes it seems like life won't cut us a break. Every time we thought we had this thing figured out, it got away from us. It seems to keep slipping, just slipping through our fingers. It drives us to the point of asking the simple question, when will this be over? In other words, is there any hope? Because to be honest with you, I've had enough. Have you ever got to the point where you just say, I've had enough? Lord, it's just been too much. And throw your hands up and say, I can't take no more. This foundation that I've just shared with you, I hope gives you an understanding of the birthplace of the words that uttered in Psalm 3. Psalm 3, 1 and 2, which gives us the problem where David cries out, oh Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. David is forced to face his numerous enemies who are solidly united against him. That means means they have locked in. They're not going anywhere. They are against David. The people mocked David and declared that God will not take care of him. They cursed the king and insult that God has abandoned him in spite of his trust. In spite of the trust that he had in God, the people are saying, God has left you. In verses 1 and 2, David is complaining to God, which is an act of faith. For you only cry out to someone you believe that is there. You don't go to people that you don't think can't help you. You don't cry on the shoulders of those who you feel cannot help. He told God exactly how he was feeling. Is it a time in your life you feel like, I need to tell God exactly how I feel about this situation? We don't look at it as complaining because he is the one that we have our faith in. How many are my foes, David says. In other words, Lord, in case you didn't know, I know you see what's going on, but just in case, because it don't look like you really see what's going on. From right here where I am, it don't look like you see it. So I need to just bring it to your attention. Lord, in case you do not know, I'm in a little outnumbered here. I'm kind of outnumbered right here. In verses 3 and 4, but you, oh Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me with his holy hill. But we have to be just like David here in verse 3. In his lowest place, his lowest of lowest. Can't go no further. You can't get no more. When your own child take what you got from you. When your own child trying to kill you. Can't get no lower than that. In the lowest place, he began to remind himself of some facts. Some facts. I like facts. He came up with a but. Notice that verse 3 starts with but. But. He came up with a but. He brings to remind God. He brings to mind God's word. He promises what he made him. His promise. He made him what he was. The Lord made him king. Nobody made him king. The Lord anointed him to be king. God gave him that throne. Nobody personally gave it to him. God gave it. He didn't inherit it. It wasn't passed down. God gave it to him. The Lord appointed him, handpicked him. Handpicked. He went out there and he kept, and they said, no, not there, no. That's him right there. That's him right there. The Lord handpicked and appointed him to lead his people, to lead God's people. So when you've been handpicked and appointed, I don't know what nobody can do with that. So in spite of what David sees, feels, or hears by faith, he believes that the Lord will be faithful to his word and be a shield around him. In other words, I'm outnumbered here, 100 to 1. But I know the Lord will defend me. He will shield me. Put a shield around me. He will restore me to my throne. In other words, he'll give me back what you gave me in the beginning. He give it back to you. David was able to eventually move from where he was on the wings of a but. But David's but ushered him from despair to victory. and I must unleash our butt in our life. But turns every tide, turns it around, but restores, but revises, but relinquishes, but renews our hope. But is the bridge to the word of God. See, notice one thing, but, and the word that followed but was Lord. See, it depends on what you put behind your butt. See, any and everything can't follow but. It can't be just no anything that follows but. It can't be but Bishop, but Elder Henderson, but Sister Shirley, but all those buts are good. And they can help you out a little bit. But see, you got to have the right thing to follow but. Remember, every negative word, even if it's true about you, even if it's true, if you declare your butt, it injects hope into the hopeless, life into lifeless. See, no matter what, we've all done something. We may not have killed anybody. I don't know, and some of us may have. We may not have done the things that David did. But I think somewhere in the Bible it says that David had a heart for God. So, when you have a heart for God, that's a different scenario. It reminds us of what can be if we only dare to believe. David's feeling the way he felt, suffering all that he was suffering, opened his mouth and reminded himself of who God was to him. See, sometimes, Brother Hockaday, him and I used to have this little joke in the office, and we used to say, well, sometimes I have to just counsel myself. Sometimes I just have to talk to me. Now, back in the day, the old folks used to say, when you talk to yourself, they considered you to be crazy. Well, my mother used to say, it's all right to talk to yourself. Just don't answer. But sometimes you need to answer. You need to talk it out with you. See, because there's some things in me that nobody know about. There's some things about me that nobody know about. So I can't talk it back and forth with just anybody. So I just talk it over in my mind to me. So when David was feeling and suffering all that he had suffered, opened his mouth and reminded himself of who God was to him. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves of who God is in our life, what he has done for me. He went to the cross for me. For me. And anybody that'll do that got to love me. He said with his mouth unto the Lord, you are a shield, not for everyone else, but right now, but for me. See, it was personal. See, it has to get personal. See, some things have to get personal. See, some places in our lives, we go so far down or we go so far into, we get so involved that it gets personal. David reminded that the Lord was his protection. Not the men. See, David thought he had lost the battle because Absalom planned this. This is not something that just happened. Y'all need to read the story. Because Absalom planned this. He stood back 4 years sitting on how to plan to take the throne from your own daddy and how to kill you. So he gathered the people. See, as they would go in and see the king and different things would happen, they would come out and he could tell that they didn't get what they wanted from the king. So he would say, well, what'd he say? And he said, well, he said this, and he said, see, if I was king. See, you got some people in your life that'll say, see, if I was this in your life, you wouldn't have to do this. If I was that, you wouldn't have to do this. So see, Absalom set that thing up. It didn't happen overnight. David's situation is what it was. But right here, where he was, he remembered that the Lord was his glory and lifter of his head. Right here, right in the middle of it, he had no glory of himself, but he had the Lord who was glory. See, he stopped looking at his men being his protector. He stopped looking for them to shield him. All of a sudden it shifted to let him know that, you know what? I don't care if it's nobody but me. I got a shield around me that you can't get by. We need to get to that point in our life, no matter what's going on. No matter how you feel and how many people you think are against you, no matter what is coming against you, it ought to be a point you just look up and say, you know what? I know you got it. I know you got this. David's head was hung in grief and eyes pouring with tears in this prayer. David talks about the Lord doing something with his head. Now his head, the head, a critical and the highest point of the body. Understand the head. The head houses the brain, the command control center. This is your brain. If your brain is not working properly, nothing else will either. If the brain is not working properly, and some of us come in contact with those that the brain may not be working properly, we understand that the brain needs to work properly. The head is where most of our senses are. Our ability to see, our ability to smell, our ability to hear, our ability to taste are all in your head. Our only remaining sense is that of touch, which can be brought close to the head. David could not, in this state of being, even lift his head. But, there that but is again. He knew that he could trust the Lord who held up his head. Now pay attention as David's confidence is emerging. Confidence not in his own abilities, not in his status. See, we put a lot of confidence in who we are in our titles. See, we love those titles, and we love to point to the wall where we got degrees, where we have paper. We love that. Well, it was a young lady on Steve Harvey the other day. She worked for him, and her main thing was, I'm double degreed. And Steve said, with your country self, he said, and I understood what Steve was saying. He really didn't just come out and say it, but Steve looked at it and said, with your country self, but this is my show. And I don't have no degree. So in other words, Steve was saying, with all that you got from school, you still work for me. The man with no degrees. I said, go ahead, Steve. He says, he's in verse 4, I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. He didn't rely here on the prayer of anyone else. Some of us will depend on others. Have you ever met people that every time you see them, they saying, pray for me? Pray for me. Keep me in your prayers. That's all. That's their word. Keep me in your prayers. And that's okay. That's okay. But sometimes you got to pray. He didn't put the responsibility on anyone else. It's not nobody else's responsibility. for your relationship with God. That's no one's responsibility but yours. He went to the Lord for himself. Right here is where I realize that the songwriter is right when he says, you can't tell it, let me tell it. There are some things and sometimes that I will thank you for your availability, but I need to get to God for myself. Because you can't tell him of my grief like I can. Can't nobody tell it like I can. You can't tell him of my suffering like I can. You can't begin to imagine some of the things that I need him to know like I can. You can't say it like I can. Sometimes my pain is too deep. My woes are too great. I've got to talk to him for myself. There are some conversations that are between just you and God. And that's where David was. He needed this conversation between him and God. And David, when he prayed, he had within himself the assurance that the Lord in his place of holiness heard him. See, we can't doubt that God is hearing us. We can't doubt that he has our back. Listen to David's heart. I'm coming to you, Lord, as filthy as I am. That means I know I'm not right. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've done wrong. You don't have to remind me of what I've done wrong. I know I have no right, none whatsoever to come. But, Lord, where else can I go? Who else can help me right here? I'm coming to you in the need of mercy. I'm coming to you in the need of compassion. All because, now listen to this. We talked about this last week. All because of a mess. I don't know if it was last week or week before last. A mess that I made. Did nobody else make it? He made it. But God, here I am, calling on you. And I need you to come and see about me. Our Bishop Wiley, often says it like this: Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, wherever shall I go? That says it all right there. Verses 5 and 6, I lay down and sleep. I wake again, for the Lord sustains me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me. David's prayer unto the Lord was so tough that he gets this. Get this. In verse 5, he laid down and went to sleep. He laid down and went to sleep. Old folks used to say, no sense in me staying up if God up. I have no doubt with the gravity of all that David endured, he was exhausted. Actually, more than that, I believe that he was physically and mentally depleted. This was a traumatic deal. Took all he had. But no matter how tired we are, fear will give us false strength to stay up and watch our lives, especially when we have no idea of who we can trust. See, sometimes fear is there. Sometimes we wonder why we can't sleep, why, we toss and we turn. Sometimes that's a little fear. You got a lot on your mind. And see, we won't acknowledge it as fear when we have loved ones that are hospitalized or in any danger. We don't sleep. But that's fear that we're going to get that phone call that's going to tell us what we don't want to hear. But David was certain that he could trust the Lord. The Bible says he slept in the midst of trouble, surrounded, listen to this now, surrounded by his enemies. That means you can be just that close. Just that close. You can be as close as that right there. But I still got a shield around me. The Bible never indicated that there was any reason to relax. But David's peace had nothing to do with what was going on around him. His peace came from within. He told us earlier that the Lord was his shield. David prayed, touched heaven, and laid his head in the Father's bosom and found rest beneath the wings of divine security and awakened in safety. That's what I'm talking about. Have you ever seen a baby that just sleeps so comfortably? Right here. Right here. And when you go to lay them down, they wake up? Oh, yeah, okay, that's right here in that bosom. This is truly a mark of a man's faith and relationship with the Father when he can be upheld above the haunting of his own heart. As we read further, verse 6, David's strength has returned. He declares, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me, around me. I will not. Sometimes we have to begin to declare what we will not take. So we'd have to declare what we will not tolerate, even what we will no longer endure. What are your will nots? As for me, I have made up my mind about some things. I will not be intimidated. I will not be pushed around. I will not be denied. I will not be delayed. I will not die with the untapped treasures inside of me. I will not continue to deny my potential. I will be all that God has said that I am. We see that David has arisen in a new strength. A weaker, more desolate David went to bed. But, I should have named this but thank the Lord, a totally renewed and strengthened David got up. Sometimes you need to go to bed after a good prayer with the Lord, after a good communion with the Lord. Sometimes you just need to lay down and get some rest because you get a renewed strength. We have to put our weakness to bed and get up with strength. We are much stronger in God than any devil that comes against us. Verse 7 and 8, arise, O Lord, save me, oh my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth and the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Finally, David, in verse 7, calls for the Lord to arise and save him. He knows firsthand that God can do it. He goes on to talk about how God has smitten all his enemies upon the cheekbone and broken the teeth of the ungodly. That's history. That means you got to have some history with God. Am I right? He's never done nothing for you. See, all of us got to have a little history with him. I know he's done something for you. As a matter of fact, what I know one thing he done for you today, he woke you up. I don't know how old you are, but he woke you up every day of your life. So I may not can touch on the key things that he has done for you or the personal things that he's done for you, but I know I can touch on some things that he has done for you. He knows firsthand what God has done. So you know firsthand what God has done for you. He goes on to talk about how God, I read that. That's it. I'm sorry. We all need to learn and to rely on our history with God. Amen. I don't know of anyone in my lifetime that has proven to be more reliable. No one. More reliable than God. He has never failed me. He has never left me. He has always come through for me. What does your history tell you about your God? David knew the Lord's power and that he would war on his behalf. He knew that God would go to war for him. He had done it before. He had the history. And David trusted him to do it again. What else could he do? Do you realize how much God will do for you? Has he done it before? Well, what makes you think he won't do it again? And where else can you go? Have people helped you? Anybody around you helped you? Have your job got you out of situation? Have your family got you out of situation? Where else can you go? Do you know anybody that is more reliable than God? If you do, let me know. I want to meet them too. Do you know of anyone that can or even wants to carry you through your situation but God? Because people will listen up until a certain point. People will be your friend up until a certain point. There was a movie. It comes on, you know, I like the Christmas movies. And it comes on and it's called The Ultimate Gift. And it's about a man that made himself rich out of oil. And he dies. His grandson is the only one that he has trust in that will handle his money the way he feels to be handled. But the grandson has been taken care of all his life. So after the man dies, in order for the grandson to get the money, he has to go through not having anything. And the grandfather wanted to see how you would respond. So the times, he had a lot of friends. The grandson had a lot of friends, partied with, hung out with, rode in a sports car, went to dinner, had girlfriends, had everything he wanted, everybody, you know, blah, blah, blah. So after when he finds out, he goes back to his apartment. He finds out that his apartment is empty. He finds out that his grandfather is taking the apartment away. He goes back outside. The car is gone. Everything is gone. So you see him walking down the street, talking on the phone, trying to find a place to lay his head. He don't even have a place to lay his head. And he's calling all the people that he has done something for. On the phone, you hear him say, man, I loaned you $10,000 when you need it, and everybody is turning him down. No place to go. No place to lay your head. Do that sound familiar to you? But I'm just saying, when he was in need, nobody that he had helped would help him. Even his mother. He knocked on the door of his mother. His mother said, you can't come in here. They told me that I can't help him. He said, but I'm your son. She said, and she didn't want to give up what she had got. See, she was married to his father, and the father was the son to the millionaire. So the grandfather left her taken care of because she was the mother to his grandson. See, some things you get just because. Just because of your relationship. So the favor that was on her son because of his grandfather, she reaped the benefits. But she said, you can't come in here because they'll cut me off. And close the door. So is it anybody? Do you know anybody more reliable than God? Do you know anybody that can or even want to carry you through your situation? David sums it all up by recalling in verse 8 that salvation belongs unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. David is talking about salvation. Let me bring it more closer to you. Let's refer it to the Lord's deliverance. Deliverance from everything that plagues us. It is the Lord's pleasure to bring you out of whatever it is that you are bound. He doesn't delight in our ties of bondage. He doesn't like to see us in bondage. He's there for deliverance. He's there to break the ropes. He's there to take the chains off. The Lord is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in him every time of trouble. He wants to do so much for us. Can you trust him? Can you trust him? Can you believe him? Then he began to open up your mouth and declare his goodness. Call heaven to earth in your situations and watch him work it out. You may be tired, but don't give up. You may be weary, but don't wash out. You may be lower than what you've ever been in life. Okay, maybe, just maybe, you, like David, are in the right posture to call upon the power of the Lord. Sometimes we need to get low. Because, see, a lot of times we think what we have and where we are in life is because of us. See, but when you don't have nothing, when you're in a posture of beneath, so maybe you're in the right posture upon the power of heaven. Think about David's life and use it in your time of weakness. As we learn from this passage, many saw David down, but not out. And a lot of people will see you down, talk about you. Say, where is your God now? I don't know, this God that you've been serving, this God that you talk about, where is he? The same is true for you. As long as you have breath in your body and warm blood flowing through your veins, you may be down, but you are not out. Remember all that God has done for you. Call upon him, he will answer. Rest in the Lord and get up a renewed strength. And the next time you talk to the one that expected you to die in the harsh winter of your situation, you look at them square in the eyes and tell them, I was down, but never out. And there is hope in a man I know named Jesus.